Hello everyone, and welcome to Fableheim and the last of the MISTOVER deep dives. To be completely honest, I've already recorded this, edited it, rendered it, uploaded it, but thanks to what someone said on episode 4 of the Sanctum Expeditions, I decided to take another look at the Ronin because I was quite harsh on my assessment of how he performed, and I'm glad that I went back and took another look. So before I go into every single one of his abilities, tell you what I think about them, and my experience with them, here is your TLDR. The Ronin is an aggressive tank. He exists to be on the front lines, getting kills, dealing damage. Can be paired successfully with a werewolf due to his ability to brand, but he doesn't have to be. And the biggest difference between him and the Paladin as far as tanking is concerned is that the Paladin is an incredibly defensive character. You can kind of just put her up there, have her provoke, heal herself, armor herself, and do a little bit of damage. But the Ronin is there to do damage. He can kind of buff himself, but if he is going to be your solo tank, he does need some support. Now before I talk about the abilities, the Ronin has a unique resource very similar to the Grim Reaper. I actually don't know what it's called, and I probably should have figured that out by now, but I've been calling it Key. And the biggest difference between the Grim Reaper and the Ronin's resource is that the Ronin does not start off with 5 when an expedition begins. Personally, I think he should. He does not naturally regenerate this resource, and the only way to get it is by attacking or killing something. So when you attack, you get 1 with any attack, even if you're expending your resource with the attack. If you crit, you'll get a second 1, and when you kill something, all 5 of them are returned to you. So you can see there's a lot of micromanagement to be done when playing with the Ronin. You need to make sure that even if you're, blocking for turns at a time, you need to make sure that the Ronin gets a kill so that he can use his abilities and be helpful. And very helpful he will be. The first of his abilities is what everyone has, your free attack for no resource. You will be using this a lot on the Ronin to develop resource to do other things. There's nothing to say about this. It's there. You'll press it a lot. The first of his abilities even, is Bloodthirsty Sword. This can be used in the middle or back column against any enemy in the middle or back column. Inflict damage equal to 240% of your attack on one enemy, and recover HP equal to 30% of your damage inflicted. Give yourself a debuff that increases the chance of being attacked by 74%. Now my Bloodthirsty Sword is level 3, because I think this is probably the most powerful of the Ronin's abilities. This is your taunt. It's one of your hardest hitting abilities, it heals you too. So this ability all around is good. If you have a Ronin, if you want to use a Ronin, get this ability. It doesn't matter how, just do it. The next is Lightning Advance. This can be used in the middle or back column against any friendly ally, on any friendly ally. Give one party member a 25% hit increase buff, forcibly move one party member forward 1 tile, 80% chance. Now when I first saw this ability, my grievance with it is that it's an 80% chance. If you're moving a friend, I feel like it should be guaranteed when you press the button. But hey, hit increase buff is good. I would be using this as a way to move my friends, because there are a lot of classes that don't have a way to move without sacrificing the turn. You could use this to put people back into position. I could see it being helpful. I don't know if I would use it, but I could see it being helpful. The next of his abilities is Showdown. Give yourself a debuff that increases the chance of being attacked by 66%. Give yourself a 25% evade increase buff. This can be used in the front or middle column, on yourself wherever you may be. This is basically Bloodthirsty Sword, but not used on an enemy. You would use this to set up your taunt, and it can be used in the front row, unlike Bloodthirsty Sword, which needs to be in the middle or back column. The evade buff is nice as well. It's just kind of like a carbon copy of the Paladin's Provoke. Personally, I don't think you need both Bloodthirsty Sword and Showdown, and my allure to the Ronin is the fact that I don't need to use just a turn provoking. His next ability is Swallow Counter. Give yourself a 25% damage reflection buff, give yourself a 25% crit increase buff. This can be used in the front or middle column or wherever you may be. I think this is a good ability. If you are using the Ronin in tanking capacity, this could be something that you bring. The next ability is Devil's Eyes. This can be used in the front or middle column against all enemies in the front or middle column. Inflict damage equal to 75% of your attack on enemies in one column. May inflict 25% evade decrease buff. 80% chance, may give enemies in one column a 25% hit decrease debuff, 80% chance. This is a good ability, and I've looked into unlocking it myself. I actually think I can now. The thing with this ability is it's not really dealing damage, but 2 buffs on an entire column, well 2 debuffs in this case on an entire column, that's good value. This is something I could see myself bringing. I currently have Wicked Blade slotted in, which is a different column attack, but again, I might look into getting this. I think it's a lot of value for one ability, which is always nice. The next ability is Bloodstreak. This can be used in the front or middle column on any enemy in the front or middle column. Inflict damage equal to 80% of your attack on one enemy. May inflict continuous damage equal to 80% of your attack with an 80% chance. 80% is the magic number, huh? This is probably the most powerful of all of the bleed attacks in the game, because usually they're like 40-40 or 40-60. I believe the Ronin is the only person that has an 80% of your attack and an 80% continuous attack bleed. So if you like bleeds, bring this. And remember, you can level up the ability to make it presumably a lot better. Personally, I don't have it because my builds have more been focused on just blowing things up, but this could be good. His next ability is Wicked Blade. This can be used in the front or middle column against all enemies in the middle or back column. Inflict damage equal to 100% of your attack on enemies in one column. The lower your HP, the more damage inflicted. If you are using the Ronin to tank, then you're going to be taking damage. You're taking damage. This is an AoE way of dealing even more damage. I think it's one of the cuttable abilities, but I think it's also one of the good offensive choices. The next of his abilities is Woodpecker Tactics. This can be used in the middle or back column on any foe in the middle or back column. Inflict damage equal to 165% of your attack on one enemy, and forcibly move it one tiled, 90% chance. It's usually forward. Give yourself a debuff that increases the chance of being attacked by 27%. That is incorrect. It brands the enemy instead of giving you more chance to be attacked. So aside from the incorrect text, this is one of the most powerful abilities that the Ronin has, and the reason I was using him up to me retrying him as a tank. Although maybe if you do have the Shadow Blade, you don't need this. And his last ability is Strike. Inflict damage equal to 150% of your attack on one enemy, and brand them. Certain skills cause additional damage on branded opponents. This can be used in the front or middle column on any enemy in any column. This is why the Ronin pairs well with the Werewolf. This allows your Werewolf to just keep spamming its ability that deals extra damage to branded targets, and allows the Ronin to be the one doing the branding. Now, if you're using the Ronin as a tank, it might be difficult to work these in, but you still can. I've managed to while using Bloodthirsty Sword. And part of what makes the Ronin so exceptionally good for a melee tank-like character is a lot of his abilities, 4 of them in fact, reach the final column. All of the ones I have slotted to. You'll find that there are very annoying casters that like to hide back there, and bringing the Ronin as either your tank or one of your tanks allows you to punch them, which is always a good feeling. The first of the Ronin's cooperative abilities is Shield of Evil. This can be used from any column and will affect all allies. Creates a shield that blocks one attack on all party members. Requires a paladin next to you. Now I'm not sure how I feel about bringing a Ronin and a paladin in the same expedition, because they're both there to tank, right? It's just the Ronin does it more aggressively, and the paladin does it more defensively. That being said, if you are bringing both, this could be a very helpful ability. I just finished fighting a boss, and, well, you know, if I could have blocked his attack where he comes out of the ground on anyone that does like 250 damage, that's absolutely insane, that would have been great. I would have loved to have had that. His next cooperative ability is Shadow Warrior. This can be used from any column, will affect all allies. Inflict damage equal to 150% of your attack on all enemies. Requires a Shadow Blade behind you. Abilities like this are always good. It's just flat damage to everything. And if you're fighting a lot of stuff, you might find that helpful. Now, I'm not sure the Ronin is the one that you want doing this, because many other classes get something to this effect as their cooperative ability. And the Ronin's costs 3 of his resource. So, of which you only have 5. You will get 1 back, of course, so technically really only costs 2, but there might be something else you can use that resource on instead. Still, if no one else is in position for one of these cooperative abilities and you need to hit everything, it'll do it. His next cooperative ability, his next and final, is Great Warrior. This can be used from all columns, will affect all enemies. Inflict damage equal to 112% of your attack on all enemies, with an 80% chance to apply a 25% evade decrease debuff, requires a werewolf next to you. Because the Ronin and werewolf pair well together, it would not be uncommon if they are standing next to each other. Both of them excel in the middle column and can do okay in the front one. I mean, the werewolf excels in the front one as well, but the Ronin likes to be in the middle, I think, personally. But about the ability itself, this is good. Again, attacking all enemies is nice, and applying evade decrease to everyone is very powerful when you're fighting multiple enemies. I would mention the fact that it costs 3 resource, but I think it could be worth it for this. I use a very similar ability that the Grim Reaper has, and it costs 3 of her resource. So it really just comes down to how well are you making sure your Ronin continues to replenish his resource by giving him the killing blow. If you're doing that well, then go ahead, spam all the cooperative abilities you want. If you're having a hard time with it, perhaps be a little bit more conservative, and use someone else's cooperative ability. Now, his expedition ability is probably the most fun expedition ability of all characters. Enlightenment. It requires 8 food. You can move multiple steps at once. Movement stops if you encounter an obstacle or enemy. Now, when it says 8 to activate the ability, but it costs a total of 16, because it will cost 4 when you activate it, and it will cost 4 for you to skip the turn where you're stunned because you flew into a wall. But basically, you press the button, you point one of the cardinal directions, and your character just goes. You fly through the sky until you hit an enemy, in which case you get the initiative. We did test that. Or you hit a wall and get stunned, or you hit an interactable object and get stunned. So, like a debris pile to loot or a rock to break. I love it. This is probably one of the most fun I've had with an expedition ability. It's great. I think only the witches is more entertaining, and that's just because you have no idea where you're going to go. As far as Jinxes are concerned, there are none, I believe, that are unique to the Ronin. Master of the Wicked Sword seems pretty unique, but I'm talking about just the white Jinxes. I haven't seen any of those. And as always, just make sure there isn't a bad Jinx like this one. Fragile if crew on sides. When fullness is at 50% or above, your defense decreases by 10% when someone is next to you. If you're using the Ronin in the middle column as your tank, like I am, this is terrible. And I'm going to get rid of it after I finish recording. So just make sure that none of your negative Jinxes are being activated because you have someone next to you, or just get rid of that Jinx, and that you're trying to utilize your beneficial Jinxes, like Majesty, when there is someone behind you, your guard increases by 10%, by having someone behind you. Usually I put the sister behind the Ronin, so this is always active. And welcome to the poorly transitioned combat portion of this video. Just look at the Ronin go. That was the Ronin's expedition ability, Enlightenment, which is incredibly fun. Absolutely fun. Even when I didn't know how to play the Ronin, I thought that was a lot of fun. And if the map size of the first boss's dungeon is any indication of what's coming, you definitely want the ability to move long distances, consuming as little food as possible. Which this does, as long as you don't run into stuff. So the formation here is nothing really to talk about. I mean, the werewolf's in the front, the Grim Reaper and the Ronin are in the center, and the sister is in the final column. The Shadow Blade is kind of just doing whatever she wants. She's moving back and forth all the time, so just kind of ignore her. But I'm not activating any cooperative abilities here. The reason that I am in the middle column, the reason the Ronin is in the middle column is because I believe that's where he shines, because that's where he has access to all of his abilities. So, yeah. I don't want this to go on too much longer because I feel like I've already said everything that needs to be said. My original thoughts on the Ronin were not very good, and that was because he didn't have any gear and he was missing all the time, so he didn't have any resource, but I also was not going out of my way to try and make sure that he got killing blows because I was just feeding them to my Grim Reaper. Now, I don't think the two conflict that much because there are plenty of enemies to share kills around, and especially once you have more gear, the Ronin can hit very hard. Very, very hard, and he can just kill something from 100 to 0. So if you are trying to gear out the Ronin, I think it's very important to have two things. Hit rating, first and foremost. Just get hit. But crit is also a very good stat for the Ronin. It doesn't matter really how much damage he deals. I mean, more damage is always nice, right? But if he is critting with his abilities, that means he's getting 2 of his resource. That basically makes his abilities free. So crit is very good with him, but definitely make sure you have hit so you can continue to generate resources through all circumstances. And definitely make sure that you're playing with the mindset that I need to give my Ronin kills. Because you don't start with 5 resource whenever you begin an expedition, even though I think you should. When you encounter your first enemy, you need to try and feed him a kill so that he can just kind of get the ball rolling, as I said earlier. Once the ball starts rolling with the Ronin, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop until he dies or the enemy dies. And that's a lot of fun. I think that he's one of the higher skill ceiling characters in the game. But once you know what you're doing, once you approach the Ronin correctly as this aggressive tank that needs to get kills, I think you're going to have a lot of fun and success with him. So I want to say thank you to my subscriber that commented on episode 4 that really made me take another look at the Ronin, because I found one of my favorite classes in the process. So thank you. And let that be a lesson to everyone to not write off any class in MISTOVER, so you've given them a good and proper look. So thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed and that you learned something about the Ronin. If you did, make sure that you like the video, subscribe, hit that stupid bell so YouTube knows to notify you, because there'll be more MISTOVER content coming very soon. Bye-bye.